The next talk is by Aswin Paul, Bridging Biology and AI, Active Inference for Biologically Plausible Decision-Making Models. This is a 15-minute video.
Hello everyone, my name is Aswin Paul. I recently finished my PhD from Monash University in Australia and is currently working as a machine learning researcher in Versus AI. So today I'm here to talk about using active inference to model biologically plausible decision making. And thank you Active Inference Institute for organizing this symposium. Let us start by mentioning a recent cutting edge experiment that was developed by Cortical Labs in Melbourne. So what they managed to do is they developed a silicon chip, and they cultured real biological neurons like mice cortical culture and human cortical culture. And they managed to couple this chip with a computer game like the game of Pong that you see on the screen right now. So the experimental result is that given meaningful feedback, these neural cultures actually demonstrate relative improvement over time in playing this game, as you can see from this graph, right? Like the MCC and SCC neurons actually demonstrate that they can actually improve in game play when compared to baseline groups like the in silico agent or the control groups. So given such advancements in experiments, from a theoretical perspective, active inference is a great candidate to model such experiments and biologically plausible decision making. So we have emerging literature and a lot of evidence suggesting this. So when we actually try and do modeling, there is a clear need of scalability in the active inference literature, where we are used to modeling very small environments with very low number of states and very low number of actions, etc. So in order to actually use active inference in such scenarios, we have to scale up the existing active inference algorithms. And in the first part of the talk, I will be talking about some algorithms and techniques that we can use to scale up modeling decision making in active inference. And in the second half, I will talk about using these algorithms to actually model the particular experiment that we saw earlier. So when we talk about scaling up active inference or scaling up decision making in active inference, the first technique I want to talk about is evaluating decision making backwards in time and not forward in time, as we usually see in the active inference literature. So when we define the expected free energy and compute which action should be taken given a particular observation, rather than evaluating expected free energy or computing it forward in time, as we see in techniques like sophisticated inference, we can actually use dynamic programming and model decision making backwards in time. And this result is actually published in paper in this particular paper, if you are interested in this particular algorithm. And a more general version of this algorithm was recently published as the inductive inference algorithm by our colleagues in Versus AI. And in that paper, we note that inductive inference algorithms scale up decision making drastically and can be applied to bigger generative models. Another technique that we can employ in this regard is to actually learn prior preferences. And in order to do that, we actually take inspiration from the optimal control literature and this particular paper. And this particular paper introduces an algorithm called said learning that improves scalability and efficiently computes the optimal action when compared to cutting edge algorithms like the Q-learning algorithm. And a particular matrix in this algorithm called the said matrix is actually very similar to the prior preferences in active inference. And we can actually learn this said matrix orders of magnitude more efficient than classic reinforcement learning algorithms. And what we do in this paper is that we show that we can actually learn prior preferences using a similar learning rule. And once we learn this prior preferences, then decision making is really easy because we don't really have to plan a lot forward in time. And we also demonstrate that learning is robust in this particular algorithm. And talking about computational complexity, both these methods One is DPFE method that computes expected free energy backwards in time, and the other one that learns prior preferences are actually orders of magnitude more efficient than the classical active inference we see in the literature or the recent sophisticated inference. And both these methods actually learn um, or scales linearly with time against the exponential computational complexity of decision making that we see in the active inference literature. So we tested these two algorithms in terms of its scalability and adaptability in state spaces as high as 900. And what we saw is that when we actually introduce stochasticity into the grid, these algorithms are more adaptable than cutting edge reinforcement learning algorithms like DynaQ. And we demonstrate that these algorithms are scalable, which gives us confidence to go ahead and model experiments like this. And when it comes to modeling neuronal dynamics, we already have existing active inference algorithms that model neuronal dynamics that is from CBS Riken, developed by Professor Isamura and colleagues. And in one of their works, they actually talk about a similar experiment where neural cultures are actually performing a perception task, which is called blind source separation. And in a more recent work, they also talk about decision making in neural cultures and develop a decision making model that can be equated to neuronal dynamics. So, going into details, we have this algorithm called counterfactual learning algorithm, and they develop a version of the variation free energy that is term to term equivalent to a neural network cost function. And this is valid for a particular class of neural network, and more details can be found in this particular paper. And there are two terms of interest in this algorithm. One is a time dependent risk parameter and a time dependent state action mapping that this particular agent uses for decision making. And because of how it is developed, it is biologically plausible and can be shown that every term is one-on-one related with the cost function that a particular class of neuronal networks actually minimize. So in one of our recent works, we generalized this algorithm to have memory, and we tested it in a similar control task like the cart pole game that we see on the screen. And we can actually draw comparison with the cart pole game and the Pong game because both of them are reactive tasks where the agent is supposed to actually react to the environment and take decisions quickly to balance this pole or to deflect the ball back. So we observe that compared to planning-based algorithms like DynaQ and DPFE, the counterfactual learning algorithms perform really well in this particular task and gives us confidence to go ahead and model the biological neurons or the kind of experiments that we saw earlier, right? And in addition to being able to model this, we also have the advantage of explainability in these algorithms, unlike deep learning algorithms that are black boxes. So if we actually perturb the environment, say in a particular episode, we can actually see that the risk term is shooting up in that episode, and this particular term captures changes in behavior of the counterfactual learning agent, and we can actually try to explain how decisions are being taken at every time point, unlike black box approaches. So given these several algorithms that we have, can we use them to actually model the manifestation of natural intelligence in experiments like DishBrain, right? So for that, we actually develop an experimental based generative model that is based on this particular experiment. So for example, this is the Pong game environment that they use in the experiment precisely. So for example, we have the X coordinate of the ball that being communicated to the DishBrain chip through 38 distinct frequencies in the experiment. And the Y coordinate of the paddle and the ball being communicated through 8 different voltage levels in the experiment. So for example, like we have 3 observation modalities in this experiment, and we note that these are the number of states and the ways of communicating that to the agent. And we uh, enumerate the state space of our generative model using this experimental details and match our generative model to be exactly like the experimental generative process. And we also have like the active inference parameters in our generative model, like the transition dynamics of a POMDP and counterfactual learning based state action mapping, the risk term and the prior preference distribution, etc., that we discussed in the talk earlier. And given that we have this experimental based generative model, we can model decision making of in silico active inference agent and hope to compare them with the experimental result to draw insights and so on, right? So first of all, we perform simulations using the counterfactual learning agent. And we can see that counterfactual learning agent with memory horizon as low as 2 is actually performing at par with the HCC group in terms of performance. So here CFL T stands for CFL memory horizon T. So as expected, with more memory horizon, it performs better. And we can actually look at which memory horizon is performing similar to the experimental group and so on. And in one of our recent works, we note that the active inference agents are incredibly data efficient compared to deep learning methods. And it is only the active inference based model, that is counterfactual learning method, that demonstrate data efficiency at par with the biological neurons when compared to deep reinforcement learning algorithms like A2C and PPO, if you are familiar with the deep reinforcement learning literature. So we also compare the planning based methods that we mentioned earlier, like the dynamic programming method. So in this particular task or the Pong game, planning is not really useful. So with increasing horizon of planning, we don't really see improvement. And planning horizon of 5 performs as good as HCC neurons. And planning beyond a point is not useful in this particular task because of the nature of the task. And we also note the explainability of our models. For example, if we look at the average risk in the counterfactual learning method, we see that the risk is actually only reducing significantly with a memory horizon of 4, and which and this can also be correlated with the performance improvement that we saw in the results graph, where with memory horizon 4 there was a significant jump in performance. And these kind of explainable insights that can be drawn from our models is a clear advantage over black box methods like a deep reinforcement learning. And we can also look at the entropy of the CL parameters, and we see that the entropy is decreasing over time. That is the evidence in learning. And parameters reveal differences in behavior of different agents, and that is a clear advantage here. And to summarize, we actually developed an experimentally informed generative model and simulated decision making in the particular environment. We tested different active inference based algorithms in this setting, and we also noted the similarity of memory augmented counterfactual learning method to the biological neurons, and we are interested in investigating similarities of the memory based CFL method more to the biological neurons. And also insights like this can inspire more experiments where aspects like memory can be studied well. There are several limitations to this work where we haven't conducted a really involved statistical analysis in comparing these agents. We are right now qualitatively comparing them with average parameters, but we would like to do more statistical analysis. And we would also like to inspire experiments from our theoretical predictions in our future work. So I thank all my collaborators in this work. And if you're interested in this particular work and the algorithms that I discussed, you can actually get access to all the papers here. And feel free to contact me if you have suggestions or more questions about this work. So thank you for your time. And I look forward to meeting you all when I have a chance next. Thank you so much.